of Jerusalem, and the town in the distance, the heavenly Jerusalem. The intricate carvings on the columns are Bible scenes. Here in number 15 is a bit of everyday 15th century life. A jeweler counting his gold with his wife at his side. This realistic painting, the work of Quentin Matisse, shows how painting can tell us much about the way people lived centuries ago. This picture was perhaps the first of the so-called genre pictures produced in Holland and Belgium, paintings of ordinary people and their way of life. In our next picture, number 16, we are viewing the famous portrait of Anne of Cleves by the German master Holbein. Henry VIII, looking for a fourth wife, commissioned Holbein to paint a likeness of a possible fiancée. In those days, of course, there were no snapshots available. The king was curiously captivated by this portrait, in spite of the awkwardness and lack of charm so shrewdly captured by the painter. After 6 months of living with the real thing, however, Henry had the marriage declared null and void. Now we come to picture 17, 5 grotesque cripples. The artist was one of the greatest of the Flemish painters, Peter Bruegel. The 5 cripples express the artist's disillusioned view of human nature. Their physical deformity is symbolic of another misery, that of the human soul, which hides itself under the ridiculous costumes and manners of the upper classes. Aside from being a savage commentator on life, Bruegel was a wonderful painter of landscapes. Notice the shimmering foliage in the background. Please move to picture 18. Bruegel may have shown us that clothes do not make a king, but here an artist seems to have been captivated by the splendor of King Francis I. Francis, by the way, was one of the foremost art patrons of the Renaissance. See how the painting glows with sumptuous fabrics, rich brocades, and precious stones. The artist is thought to be Jean Clouet. In number 19, we move to a quieter form of beauty. In this charming view of a young girl making lace, we see how the Dutch painter Vermeer could make an unforgettable visual experience out of the humblest subject. We are struck by the silence which Vermeer so often paints, where life seems to flow slowly by. Please move now to slide 20. There's nothing quiet about this picture. This bold and buxom gypsy girl makes us think of colorful side streets and taverns. This restless, earthy work is characteristic of its painter, the 17th century Dutch realist Frans Hals. He worked with amazing speed. It may have taken him only a few hours to reveal the beauty of this unglamorous subject which more fashionable artists would have passed by. What a difference between this painting and our next, number 21. Bathsheba by Rembrandt. Hals was a builder of solid forms, but in Rembrandt, light is the very soul of the painting. Through light, he expressed the drama of humanity. Here, light and shade evoke the anguish of Bathsheba's spirit as she learns that her husband will be killed. A golden light seems to radiate from her flesh, and Rembrandt here has given an ordinary woman the grandeur of a biblical heroine. Please move now to picture 22. One of the most celebrated of all landscapes. The artist, the 17th century Dutchman Hobbema, had no story to tell other than the unadorned story of nature itself. People are rarely present in Hobbema's landscapes, nor is there moralizing, yet underneath the peacefulness of the scene is the restless, crowding energy of life and growth. In number 23, we have entered the 18th century with the work of the Frenchman Chardin. As we see in Back from the Market, he was most intrigued by the world of daily life, the faces of neighbors, dishes of food. Here his brush lingers over the rich textures of the cloth, the varied light of the bread and the bottles. He paints these humble things as though they were gifts of the gods. Now we come to picture 24. Quite a different sort of painting, a lovely portrait of a young child, more like a dream of perfection than a realistic likeness. It is the work of Joshua Reynolds, an English master who believed in making his subjects appear as graceful and aristocratic as possible. This portrait may flatter its subject, but who can deny that its charm and beauty give us great pleasure? Now please turn the slide card over. This brings us to number 25, An enchanting scene of an English countryside on a summer day, the work of the English artist Constable. The fields are thick with golden green grass, and against a wide expanse of sky we see the spire of Salisbury, the most beautiful Gothic cathedral in England. Here we have a very delicate work done with soft brushes. The effect is somewhat like a watercolor, airy and brilliant. In picture 26, we are back with goddesses again. This is the work of the 18th century French painter Boucher, and is a magnificent composition. Notice the complicated crisscross of arms and legs near the bottom of the picture. It is a wonderfully decorative treatment of foliage, draperies, flesh, and light. Moving to number 27, we meet the great Spanish painter Goya, who is best known for ruthless portraits and etchings about the horrors of war. But this painting is different. It glows with the sheer joy of painting. Though the model is bursting with health, no thought hides behind her face. It has an independent life, as if it were a mask. In picture 28, we view the battle of the Romans and Sabines by the famous David. During the violent upheavals of the French Revolution, David was thrown into prison, and there he began this painting in which a woman appeals for an end to the fighting and killing. He hoped that the moral would help unite all Frenchmen. The figures in this painting remind us of statues, for David believed that the noblest art was that which resembled ancient sculpture. Move now to number 29. This scene of liberty leading the people was inspired by a later French Revolution, that of 1830. Delacroix painted himself into it as the top-hatted man at the left, but it is the powerful feminine figure who dominates the hurly-burly. Feel the excitement in this painting. The smoke and vivid flashes of color seem about to burst out of the canvas. In picture 30, we see a wonderful example of the romantic style of the early 1800s, violent, charged with emotion, twisting and turning in bold movement. It is the work of Géricault. His love of fire-eating steeds such as this may have been his downfall, for he died after being thrown by a horse. Now we come to number 31, a painting which restores us to the calm serenity of classical painting. In Madame Rivière by the 19th century painter Ingres, we can see how the artist simplified his lines. The flesh tones suggest tinted wax. Madame Rivière is brittle, but still very beautiful. The final picture of our tour by the 19th century artist Daumier is simple and direct. Note the vigorous, unpolished brushwork. It points to the art of our own day. There is strength as well as fatigue in this tired 19th century washerwoman who must take her child to work with her. With this famous painting, we end our tour of 700 years of magnificent art, preserved for the delight of our senses and the summoning up of our deepest feelings in the immortal masterpieces of the Louvre.